Welcome to the new YouTube channel. If you haven't already done it, hit the subscribe button to follow us all season long for updates and content. So happy that you're here. It's going to be a great year. Welcome back to the Richard Sherman podcast. A very chaotic and exciting week, Mitchell. I can't believe some of these games, some of the teams that won, some of the teams that didn't win. But we'll start in Seattle, where it went really well. Then we'll get all the way to your Detroit Lions, Mitchell. I know you want to talk about them.
I do, Rich, but you got to start out west. Your Seattle Seahawks are 3-0, taking over the NFC West. No team within, 2 games of them right now, Richard? This came out of nowhere, frankly. Seattle playing against the Miami Dolphin team without Tua Tagovailoa really took control early and never relinquished it. Richard, what are your thoughts and impressions after this game? Because you got to be sitting there feeling pretty darn good as a Seattle Seahawk alum.
Yeah, Mitchell, it's one of those things that you got to feel really good. If you're Mike Macdonald, you couldn't have asked for a better start to go win the first game against the Denver Broncos, to go to Gillette and beat the New England Patriots with everything that they've done, their history. You know, they're not at their best right now, but still a huge road win, East Coast time zone. Then to come home, a banged up Miami Dolphins team, but to do what you're expected to do. They gave up 3 points in the ball game on this defense. They had 6 sacks, and it's just the way that they're getting home. Right now, Mike Macdonald has these guys playing in the perfect position. Draymond Jones, he's not in a 3, he's not in the nose, he's at an end, sometimes a 5, sometimes a 4, but he's in a better spot than he was last year. Jaron Reed is in a perfect spot. They lost Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams during the game. That did not change anything. Boye Mafe, a name that you need to get familiar with, because the National Football League is getting familiar with it, because he's picking up where he left off last year, where he was one of the top pass rushers in terms of win rate, in terms of pressure percentages and things like that. Now he's finishing the job. Then you got Derek Hall, a guy that they were really hyped about early on. The past regime that drafted him didn't have the kind of production you would want in his first year. And now, again, in the perfect system. These guys, it's almost like they drafted these guys for Mike Macdonald. I can see why he came to the Seahawks organization, because he saw this D-line. He saw how much they invested into it. He said, we can add a little bit more to it. They have the secondary. They have the secondary play in Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen and Jordan Love and Jenkins, and they feel good about the linebackers that they could potentially bring in. And Tyrell Dodson got a sack in this game. I mean, the pressure was coming from everywhere. They were covering well. They were swarming. And then offensively, Geno deserves a ton of credit for what he was able to do. 26 to 34, 289, the touchdown. He did have the 2 interceptions. Zach Charbonnet had his best game as a pro, 18 rushes for 91 yards, breaking tackles, running a very physical game. They're still looking to get K9 back, but as he comes back, this is just going to make the Seahawks a better team. Rashawn Jenkins had 10 tackles in the game, but DK Metcalf had that very long catch and touchdown run. I know that had to feel good for him and Geno Smith to just have that kind of connection, to have an explosive play early in the ball game, a huge highlight play that really sparked this team and got this Seahawks fan base into this game early on, and they never relented this lead. Obviously, I thought there were some lulls at times offensively where they could keep their foot on the gas and continue to punch and continue to take shots, continue to develop. Tyler Lockett had a solid game. Noah Fant had a good game, 6 catches for 60 yards. But they just need to continue to keep their foot on the gas offensively, because defensively, I think they kept their foot on the gas the whole game. They kept bringing pressures, even when they came in. Skylar Thompson had 107 yards in the game. He got knocked out of the game. Then they brought Tim Boyle in. Tim Boyle got sacked 1 time. Skylar Thompson got sacked 5 times. Like, that's what you want to see. A game like this, a team you're supposed to beat, you want to see you dominate them in this way. Dominate them defensively. Let the crowd noise get into it. And we heard it the whole game. There was offsides. There was false starts. There was chaos. There was Mike McDaniels burning timeouts throughout the game. This was a very tough environment. They played well against the run in the pass, and to do that with the injuries that they have, it's really exciting. And now for a segment brought to you by Uber Eats, the almost perfect defense, where we highlight the NFL defense that put on the week's best performance. This week, obviously, it was the Seattle Seahawks. We just talked about them. Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, Tyrell Dodson, Jaron Reed getting home. I mean, holding this offense to 3 points overall. They've been playing great defense all year, and they continue to do so. I look forward to them and seeing what they can do against the Detroit Lions. The Seattle Seahawks are this week's Uber Eats almost perfect defense. And remember, you can order almost anything you want with Uber Eats, the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Now they go to your boys, Mitchell. They got a date with the Detroit Lions coming off a very big win in Arizona. Tell me what you thought about that game.
Well, before we get into that game, Richard, my thought process on Seattle is this. DK Metcalf's shown up, especially in the last 2 games. I mean, back-to-back 100-plus yard games, 17 receptions on the season already. You know, if he continues at this pace, Rich, and they get a true, all-pro contender at wideout, Richard, this offense takes another step. DK Metcalf just, to me, looks like a different player this season. He looks like he's elevated his game a lot. You add Zach Charbonnet along with K9. Seattle scares me next week, Richard, against the Detroit Lions. They've had their way with the Lions of recent. It scares me that they're coming back to Detroit in prime time. We're going to see who Seattle really is, because common layman, Denver, Patriots, and now Tua Tagovailoa, Miami Dolphins. I don't know what to think of Seattle with that schedule. Next week's the test. Richard, let's break it down, because the Detroit Lions had a lot of people, including myself, worried after last week's loss against Tampa Bay. And they go on the road against Arizona, and Arizona's getting a lot of hype for the way they've played the last 2 games. You know, they lose on the road in a tough game against the Bills, and then come home last week and absolutely dominate. And now here we are, Detroit, fresh off a Tampa Bay loss, going to Arizona, going cross country. And Richard, the game got tight a little bit late, but I was actually quite surprised at how well the Lions maintained themselves throughout this game. Jared Goff looked like he was back to himself. He had one lousy interception there that gave Arizona extra life, but you saw Detroit get back to basics. They got back to basics with the run game. David Montgomery got it going, 23 runs for 105 yards and a touchdown. You know, they go down first drive, run, hammered in the end zone. They get Jahmyr Gibbs involved, and then they get cute with the nice hook and ladder to Jahmyr Gibbs right before halftime. I mean, Richard, this is what we thought we would see coming into the season for the Lions, and we're seeing some life. They still got to grow a bit, because they had an opportunity to put this game to bed early and alleviate all concerns, and they couldn't find the end zone late, and that's where I think they need to improve. Aiden Hutchinson, like I told you, Rich, watch out for this Detroit Lions defense. I think they're going to be top 10 in the league, and they're showing it as such. They got a first-team All-Pro. I'm calling it right now, and Aiden Hutchinson on that line. He leads the league in sacks with 6.5. I mean, their secondary is much improved. Richard, I love the chances for the Lions against Seattle on Monday night. I think this team's going to come out with a lot of hunger. They know how important this game is. They know how tough Seattle is as an opponent. They're going to respect this team, and I see the Lions coming out ahead. I don't want to jinx it, because I know this is what I said about Tampa Bay, but I feel very, very confident. Richard, what are your thoughts on this team? Because are they going to get back into your top 5 of the power ranks? Because I think they kind of deserved it a little bit here.
No, they're not, Mitchell. They're not. And I say this with as much respect as I can give. There are just other teams playing out of their minds right now, and I have to give them that kind of respect. But this Detroit Lions team did take a step up. There's going to be a little controversy. Obviously, that play where the play got dead, the play was called dead. It was 2-minute warning, but it looked like a pick six. Some guys stopped playing. Some guys didn't stop playing. It's I'd never seen a ref call that. I've never seen a ref stop a game at the snap when it was that close to the 2-minute warning. I've never seen that, but it happened, and Detroit was able to withstand that kind of play. They ran the ball really well. I mean, I don't know too many teams that are going to have a guy rush the ball 23 times and then have another guy rush it 16 more times. But that's the kind of game that Detroit wanted to play in this ball game, and I respect that. They threw the ball 23 times. Jared Goff was really efficient, and you talked about the one interception, but to be able to run the ball that effectively, Jahmyr Gibbs had 16 carries for 83 yards. That would be a good game for a running back, period, alone in its own microcosm. But to have David Montgomery carry it for 23 more times for 105 yards and another TD, and then Jahmyr Gibbs at the receiving TD on top of that. You're talking about one of the most dynamic backfields in the National Football League, and they continue to show that, and that's why you should feel really good about this team. But defensively, I think Aiden Hutchinson is doing great. Obviously, Kirby Joseph with the interception played a good game. Kyler Murray is a tough opponent. I mean, he's ripping and running all around. They held Marvin Harrison Jr. relatively in check, 5 catches for 61 yards. They protected Jared Goff pretty well. Obviously, they have a lot invested into this offensive line, and Aiden Hutchinson definitely has a case to lead the league with 6.5 sacks. But you still got guys like Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, huge names like that are never ever too far from that All-Pro list. So he's definitely off to the best start of his career and a fantastic start that nobody can argue with. But I got to let this continue to play out. I think it's going to be a really good game with the Seattle Seahawks. I'm glad it's on Monday Night Football. The world gets to watch. It's going to be 2 quality opponents. And I cannot call that one. Cliff Averill is going to be there, alumni of both teams.
Nice.
And it's going to be a really fun deal.
TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6. Whatever you want to call a touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, from special teams or defense, we don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your bet today. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Richard. That's code Richard for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5, and you get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
But a game that's not going to be very fun to talk about. Mitchell,
you really want to go here, Rich, eh?
I have to go here, Mitchell. We can't not go here.
I know you got to be tremendously bummed. I thought they had complete control of this game. I thought they were going to weather the injury storm without Deebo, without CMC, without George Kittle. There were a lot of variables working against them today. I think a lot of fans, myself included, took the Rams very lightly. They did not have either of their top 2 wideouts in Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. But Richard, when you put the ball in the hands of a gunslinger like Matthew Stafford, this is what he does. He loves chasing teams while behind. He did this all the time in Detroit. And there's nothing better than for him to take a team from behind on the road, or at home, against a division foe. Richard, I know you got to be devastated here. What level of concern do you have for the 49ers in the state they're in right now, starting the season off 1-2?
Well, I got a lot of concern for the defensive side of the ball. The strength, what I would have said and everybody else in the world would have said, is the strength of this team, and has been a strength for a number of years. Number of all-pro players. We talk about it all the time. Talanoa Hufanga returned to the lineup. Was really impactful in this game, had 7 tackles. You talk about the big paid guys like Javon Hargrave, Nicholas John Bosa, the all-pro Fred Warner. Charvarius Ward has been playing like a top cornerback throughout the years. And Diamador Lenore, friend of the program, has had a number of incredible plays and really good seasons that he's put together. And none of that was the case today. Mitchell. Tutu Atwell was able to have his way. Huge catch late in the fourth quarter with Charvarius Ward in coverage. That's a play I'm sure he wants back, a play you can't have. And as a dominating defense, you cannot allow a team that's this banged up offensively. And I held my breath and I said, this is a kind of a trap game. When they're that beat up on the offensive line, it should be a blowout game for the San Francisco 49ers. They should be able to get home. They did not get at home as much as I would think against Matthew Stafford. They got 3 sacks, but that's not enough in a game where their offensive line is this beat up. They don't have a true number one receiver. They're with backups and practice squad receivers. Kyron Williams is a good back, but I mean, Matthew Stafford didn't complete a pass until 8:26 in the second quarter. 8 minutes and 26 seconds into the second quarter is when he completed his first pass. But when he gets going, Mitchell, when he gets going, he gets going. And then you have the punt return, the special teams miscues continue to stack up. And when you're elite, a contender, these aren't the things that you can have happen. You have to have things you can depend on, that you can hang your hat on and say, hey, no matter what, these are the things that we're going to have. And this is going to take away from an incredible game from Brock Purdy, an incredible game from Jauan Jennings. Jauan Jennings, 11 catches, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns, deserves praise, deserves credit, deserves celebration. Brock Purdy was 22 of 30, 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, ran the ball 41 yards. He did lose the 1 fumble when Colton McKivitz got beat really badly early on, and he got. He got forced fumble. He lost that fumble. That's a play. I mean, they have to get cleaned up. Yeah, I mean, you can't have that from Colton McKivitz. You can't have that. You can't get beat that bad. And I know we don't want to talk bad about players, but I mean, that's just an unacceptable play for a pro to have. And when you have those unacceptable plays, there's going to be criticism attached with it. Jake Moody missed a field goal that could have easily helped this team win this ball game. The play at the end of the game was cool. There was a lot of talkbacks. Guys getting the ball down the field. It was a fun play to watch, but it's not a fun play to watch unless San Francisco 49ers win the ball game, and they did not. Critical drop from Ronnie Bell. I mean, just unexcusable. There were 7 drops in this game from the San Francisco 49ers. Those are unacceptable numbers. And we can talk about Deebo Samuel being out. We can talk about George Kittle being out. We can talk about Christian McCaffrey being out. No. That was not the reason they lost this game. The offense moved the ball. The offense scored effectively. The offense, I mean, they had chances. They had a chance to close this game out many times, but drop passes, lack of execution, damned them. Jordan Mason had 19 carries for 77 yards, a solid game, not his best game, not a game that we're accustomed to seeing from him. But you got to think, Sean McVay knows this offense because he runs this offense. So both sides were going to have some limitations, but as this defense that we hold in such regard for obvious reasons and because they've earned this, they got to play better. They have to. Your best players have to play your best, and this has been consecutive games because they didn't play great outside of Fred Warner. And Bosa had 2 sacks against the Minnesota Vikings, but you need to play better against the Minnesota Vikings, and they played pretty good football against the Jets. But it's one of those things that there's going to have to be some conversations, and I'm sure there will be conversations in that locker room where they're saying, "Hey, we're better than this. It's not time to panic or time to point fingers or start infighting, but it is time to wake up. It's time to start taking this more seriously. It's time to understand this is the National Football League. There are no easy games. And to drop a game like this means you're going to have to, you don't have any margin for error. The Seattle Seahawks are at the top of the NFC West right now, 3-0, haven't lost a game. They go to Detroit, a really tough game in Detroit. And then they in a couple of weeks, they play the San Francisco 49ers. And that's going to be a game that's pivotal. The San Francisco 49ers need to get things together heading into that game because offensively, I'm not mad at what Brock Purdy did. I thought this was a statement game for Brock Purdy because they say he can't do it without his weapons. He can't. What is he going to do when Kittle's out? What is he going to do when Deebo's out? What is he going to do if Christian McCaffrey? Well, all 3 of them were out. He threw for almost 300, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. He ran the ball for 41 yards. He's a good quarterback. He's an elite quarterback. I'd say he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the National Football League. And if you give him the same criticism then please give it to Joe Burrow. Please give it to every quarterback that you think is elite that has not played that way, because he's playing that way and you don't want to give him credit. Don't tell me T. Higgins is hurt and that's why Joe Burrow is playing the way he did, because that's asinine. That's hypocritical, because you're saying, so now he needs T. Higgins to be able to reach his potential. So he's not alone special. He's only special if he has T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and all these weapons and Joe Mixon, or is he special in his own right? He's a heck of a quarterback, but he does need help. And I'm trying to get people to understand, you got guys playing some really good football right now that will never get credit because of what you think of them or what the past. Geno Smith played a really good game, has played, with the 2 interceptions, that'll take away from his performance. But Sam Darnold was forgotten about, left for dead, not relevant, and playing elite football. So if you talked about the top quarterbacks in the National Football League right now, it's not necessarily the highest paid guys. It's not. And if you talk about this list and you don't mention Brock Purdy, then you're a hater. Then you're just a hater. You're just a guy who doesn't like low round picks, overachieving and playing above what you expect them to do. And you want to continue to go with things that are the way they're projected. Hey, this guy was a first round pick. This guy I think should be good. So I'm going to say he's good. And I'm not expecting this guy to be good. So even if he's playing good, I'm not going to give him that kind of credit. Oh, this is a frustrating loss. I know Kyle Shanahan's frustrated. I know Nick Sorensen's frustrated, because at the end of the day, coaches can only do so much. Coaches can scheme it up, call the play, but you got to execute. If they call man-to-man and the corner gets beat, you could say he should have called zone. If they call zone and he gets beat, you could say he should have called man. But at the end of the day, you got really high-level players that can execute and play the game at a high level that you need to play. Players got to play the games. Players win the game. Players execute the scheme. Players make the scheme come to life. Players can turn a bad play into a good play. Players can make a good scheme look like a bad scheme. They have to execute at a better level defensively. They have to get more pressure on these quarterbacks, and maybe that's bringing 5. Maybe that's bringing 6. Maybe they need to go to that, because right now it used to be a 4-man pressure. They can get home, and they're not doing that as consistently. They're not making the quarterback uncomfortable, and that's changing fundamentally the structure of the defense. So, the 49ers got the Patriots next week. They have to find a way to win that game. They have to find a way to get back on track. Hopefully that's, they get healthier in the meantime. Talanoa puts another game under his belt. But they have to win that game, Mitchell. That is the early season must win. If they lose that game, then the panic meter goes to a 9 or a 10.
I'm with you. But let me ease the concern a little bit for you here, Richard, because I know you remind me of me last week when the Lions lost, when I asked you to talk me off the ledge here. Let me do the same for you. Richard, the San Francisco 49ers last year went through a substantial losing streak in the midway point of the season, and everyone was freaked out. I remember you were a little bit freaked out. I was a little concerned for him as well. But, Richard, throughout this, early season, a drought, if you will, they've been playing without CMC, obviously, now Kittle and Deebo, but we've seen these underlying players, these lesser-known guys emerge. Jordan Mason, like we already talked about, as soon as CMC comes back, they're going to be able to lean on Jordan Mason late. So for me, I view that as a positive. And then we always loved third and Jauan Jennings, but Richard, 11 catches for 175 and 3 tutties. I mean, when you get him and rookie Purcell going and you get Deebo back, by week 6, week 7, I think the Niners return to where they were last year. And I think, as a Lion fan, I'm personally always going to be afraid of them. I think these injuries are going to allow them to grow some of their lower tier players and elevate their confidence levels. The one area of concern I do have with the Niners is you pay this guy, Brandon Ayuk, all this money in the offseason, and he's got 3 straight underwhelming games. Richard, this was his moment to shine. Everyone thought Brandon Ayuk was going to blow up today. Without Deebo, without CMC, without Kittle, who are you going to target? You're going to target Brandon Ayuk. And he walks away with an underwhelming 5 catches for 48 yards. Jauan Jennings turns into be that go-to guy. Richard, what is going on with Brandon Ayuk right now?
Again, it's a lack of chemistry, Mitchell. You have to put the time in. You have to put the time in with these quarterbacks again and again and again. I'm going to keep saying it. No matter what you say, like, hey, he was holding in training camp. He was in the building. He was working out, staying in shape, getting treatment in the meetings. but he wasn't building a rapport with the quarterback like he did last season. And when you don't do that in the game, I mean, he built a rapport with Jauan Jennings. They have built-in plays, and you can see it. He has a trust in Jauan Jennings. He has a feel. He has a understanding of where he's going to be on the field and where he likes the football, and he puts it there. And you can see that throughout the ball game. It's just sad because I'm glad that Jauan got to have a game like this so that the world can see what he's capable of, because he gets buried below these superstars, and deservedly so. They deserve, Deebo deserves all the credit he deserves. Brandon just got paid, has played really good football. George Kittle, all these guys, but a guy like that who's a really talented player never gets to shine in the way that he deserves until a game like this. And then he shines, and people are like, where'd this come from? And it's like, well, if you watch the Super Bowl, I mean, he gets open, he catches the ball. He could do that against just about anybody at any level. He's just not going to be a highly targeted guy in this offense, and he never has been. But when he finally got an opportunity to be targeted that way, he shined in a big way, and I'm very happy for him. Happy for his family. I think he made himself a lot of money today. And I just wish the defense and the rest of the team could have stepped up and finished this game off. I don't want to point the finger at anybody specifically. I think everybody's going to be able to look at the tape and hold themselves accountable that they could have played a better ball game. And hopefully step up next week and play a better ball game and get a win against the New England Patriots to get back to 500. Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video. It's the best season yet, packed with big rivalries and even bigger stars. Join Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, and Kaylee Hartung every week for the games you can't miss. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party, TNF Tonight. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. It's Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Richard, let's turn to Indianapolis, rather. They get a much-needed win against the Chicago Bears. And Richard, let's go back to last week's podcast. You were highly critical of the Bears offseason. They went with Rome Odunze, who had a big game today, but they didn't go with the offensive lineman you talked about. As a Bears fan, when you see Justin Fields lead the Pittsburgh Steelers to a 3-0 record, and you think to yourself, man, we could have had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Joe Alt potentially if we did not go with Caleb Williams. Richard, all they had to do was trade back. They could have got them both. And you got to think, hey, did we make the right move? I know Caleb Williams is a rookie quarterback. He finally got his first TD passes of the season. He put up some big numbers today. A lot of late. I don't want to call it garbage time because they were in the game, but late time needed passing yards down the stretch. Richard, what are your thoughts on Caleb Williams and this Bears team? I had a lot higher expectations than what looks to be another tough season for him.
Well, I have high expectations for their defense, and their defense played an incredible game. So give them a lot of credit. Their defense continues to find ways to keep them in ball games, to make big plays. Jalen Johnson, friend of the program, got another interception. Huge play, trying to keep this guy in the ball game. But you look at it, and it's and again, I want to double down on my comments that I don't think that they made the right decision in the draft in terms of not getting an offensive lineman. Even if you did get Caleb Williams, I thought the next pick should have been an offensive lineman, and not that that's any shot against Rome Odunze. He should have went exactly where he would have went, and he would have went that regardless if they were picking or somebody else, because he was an elite receiver coming into this draft. But you look at the issues that are prevalent and consistently showing up. It's Caleb holding the ball too long, trying to wait for a big play and not just taking what the defense gives him. That's something a young guy is just going to have to learn. That was his problem at USC. In a lot of these games, he would not take what the defense gave him. He passed up a hitch for a bomb all day throughout the game, and you can't do that in the National Football League. You have to take what the defense gives you. And then even when he's trying to take what the defense gives him, he's late. He's late. And there were times this offensive line, the Chicago Bears offensive line, gave him time, Mitchell, 4, 5 seconds to go through his progressions. Bang, 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 go boom, boom, boom. And then he gets to the last read and throws a pick because he's late. And in the National Football League, corners and DBs are ahead of you. We're a step ahead. We see where you're looking. We say, hey, if he comes back here, that's a pick. Or if he comes back here, that's a bat down. Like they already know. They're planning for your second move. You may get your first read. That, hey, you hit your back foot in rhythm, let the ball go. You should have a little bit of separation, or the zone may be slightly open. But as the clock ticks to your second read, things get tighter. And as the third read, things get tighter. And then you get to your fourth read, and it's tiny windows, Mitchell. The windows are really small, and he has to learn that. He has to learn you can't go late to your fourth read and let it be a hitch into a cover two corner that's been sitting there waiting for you to come back to this, praying for you to come back to this, and then you come and you reward them. And so that's just the learning that he needs to go through. He did get a lot of garbage time yards. He got a nice touchdown throw to Rome Odunze. A nice deep throw to Rome Odunze right before the interception. And you got to give him credit. And I like that he kept fighting throughout the game. And, some of it was garbage time yards, but even the garbage time yards are nice because you get to see him do some of the things that they drafted him to do. Some of the things you saw him do in college when he was playing really special football, and you see him getting out of the pocket, squaring his body up, slinging a rock and around the yard and hitting different receivers, and it's being effective. He needs to see that. It's like in a basketball game. Even if it's garbage time, you got a guy who's been in a slump and he starts to see the basketball go through the hoop. Mitchell, next game, that might be the game that he breaks through because he got to see some success. He got to see the ball go through the basket. And that's why this garbage time in this game was good for Caleb Williams in some ways, but it's bad because he threw the interceptions and all that. But at least he got to see himself have some semblance of success in a National Football League game. And that's good for the future, and that bodes well. But as I said before, Mitchell, I think they could have went a different way. But in that case, would you be regretting not getting Caleb Williams? Because if he goes to a team with better structure, better, maybe a better coordinator, maybe a better system, does he thrive earlier, or does he sit a little bit and then thrive? Who knows? And sometimes, back to what we were talking about before, the perfect system makes a player elevate in a way and really showcase his talents in a way that individuals in a bad system are individuals that are just trying to improvise and make the best of a situation. They rarely shine.
Well, Richard, he's going to have an opportunity next week against the beat-up Rams. We'll see if he can return to the winning column for the Bears. Richard, America's game of the week in Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys desperately needing a win against the 0-2 Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens came in and showcased that they wanted this game a lot more. What are you more surprised of, Richard? The fact that the Baltimore Ravens beat Dallas on their own turf, or the fact that Dallas just flat out didn't show up?
I'm concerned about Dallas. Dallas has, at least for the last few years, been a very, very good home team. They've been very good at home. They won a lot of ball games. I want to say they were undefeated. I mean, they had won something like 16 straight at home, something like that last year. And so to lose back-to-back games, they got blown out by the New Orleans Saints. And the New Orleans Saints ran the football all over the Dallas Cowboys. And that's been the book on a Mike Zimmer defense for a long time. I mean, unless he had big people eaters at the D tackle spots and at the nose and three technique, when he had Linval and those boys, teams have had success running against that two high quarters defense that he's been known for a number of years. And that's why I don't think anybody was looking to hire him as their coordinator, because he has to find a way to rectify that. And this has been evident in these last two games. I mean, they ran for 275, Mitchell, 275 on him. Like 275 is incredible for a team to run in an NFL game against another NFL team, even a bad team. And this isn't a bad team. This is a really talented Dallas Cowboys team. And they weren't able to stop the run, and they haven't been able to stop it for the last 2 weeks at home. That's a terrible trait to have. They're not great at getting leads. They haven't been great at containing these guys. Lamar Jackson only threw the ball 15 times for 182 yards, threw for 1 touchdown. He ran it 14 times for 87 yards. Kyle Van Noy, again, continues his resurgence with the Baltimore Ravens, had 2 sacks. That defense is starting to get its rhythm back. Obviously, the Cowboys were able to make some hay late in the game. Dak Prescott ends the game 28 of 51 for 379 and 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. Jake Ferguson had 5 catches for 95 yards. CeeDee Lamb, there was a heated moment. There were heated moments on the sideline between Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee Lamb said, I ain't going nowhere. I'm going to be here. Get me the ball. Get me the ball. They already paid me. I'm not going nowhere. You're not going nowhere. Give me the ball. Throw me the football. You saw what kind of success we could have when I get the ball. For some reason, they weren't able to connect. CeeDee Lamb obviously had the turnover in the red zone when they were, it was 14-3. It was a red zone fumble. I'm sure he wants that one back, but you still got to feed him the ball. Kevontae Turpin and Jalen Tolbert both had a receiving TD. There was a lot of hype about Jalen Tolbert coming out of training camp, that he was going to have a really breakout season. And it hasn't really been the case. In this pass rush that it's been so devastating under Dan Quinn. Listen to me, Mitchell. Under Dan Quinn, this pass rush has been elite. The secondary under Al Harris has been elite. The pass rush gets 1 quarterback hit, no sacks in this ball game of Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson obviously is one of the best quarterbacks at avoiding a sack, getting out of tough situations. But this O-line has given up sacks. This Baltimore O-line has given up sacks. They've given up pressure. And this has been consecutive games where you just aren't seeing the same quality of defense from the Dallas Cowboys, from that front that has been so elite and so aggressive. Micah Parsons has been getting 10+ sacks, been all pro multiple times, and you're just not seeing that kind of pop, that kind of spark, that kind of speed. And that's concerning to me. The defensive side of the ball is where the concern is, because, you're not going to stop Derrick Henry, but we just watched this team lose to the they lost to the Raiders at home. And I don't really know. Obviously they lost to Kansas City the first game, so you can give them that with a wash. But to lose to the Raiders and then the Cowboys get really manhandled for a great portion of this game, you got to be really concerned if you're a Cowboys fan, because you don't know where you're going to hang your hat. Like, what do we hang our hat on now? They're not running. They can't run the ball at all. Not that they can't run it well. They can't run it at all. Like, they have no semblance of a running game. The offensive line, the left tackle, you're replacing a legend, but it's just really, really a spot that they've always had so much security and so much stability. And now you see the left tackle giving up pressure into Dak's lap consistently. You can't hold up. And it's just certain things that were almost a given with the Dallas Cowboys that aren't anymore. And it's really, really concerning. And they got the Giants. We got the Dallas Cowboys and the Giants in New York this Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern on Prime Video. And I look forward to seeing that, because the Giants played a solid ball game this week. They played a solid ball game. It was probably Daniel Jones' best game in probably a few years. Malik Neighbors really put on a big-time show. Singletary ran the ball well defensively. They made some plays. It was fun to watch that. And that's a team that's getting confident and on the upward slope. And if the Dallas Cowboys continue on this downward spiral, this Thursday night football could be, a house of horrors if the Giants somehow pull out a victory on prime time, on Prime Video. Eesh, ooh,
I
I'd hate to
too
be a
am with
Cowboys fan.
you, Richard. I would be mighty concerned about them. I mean, if it weren't for this fourth quarter where they made the game look somewhat close, I mean, this team's been getting bullied for the last 7 quarters of football they've played. I mean, the Saints game was an embarrassment, and this game was too. Right off the gates, Baltimore goes down, scores. They score again, and they just take control and sit on the lead. And like they were just pounding the rock. I mean, Derrick Henry averaged over 6 yards a carry today with 2 touchdowns. I mean, Richard, if you put the Ravens in a position of a multi-score lead early, they're probably the most dangerous team in the NFL because they have the versatility with the run game and the pass game to be able to sit on leagues and make life very difficult, especially for the Dallas Cowboys. Richard, like you said, if they lose this game against the Giants, concern level 10 in Dallas. Richard, we got to talk about the NFC North a little bit more here. Let's go up to Minnesota. We were talking a bit about it off air. Is there a more surprising team in the league right now than the Minnesota Vikings and the way they've been playing football?
Well, I mean, no, no, there isn't. I'll say that there isn't a more surprising team because they're playing in such a dominant fashion. I mean, and they're playing against teams that in the preseason, myself, you, a lot of the experts had as some of the elite teams, the Houston Texans, one of the best teams. We talked about them making the AFC championship potentially.
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco 49ers coming off the Super Bowl. They just went to the Super Bowl appearance. They beat them pretty handily and pretty impressively. It wasn't a blowout like they did against Houston, but it was impressive, and they were in control a lot of that ball game. Brian Flores kept Kyle Shanahan and kept it has really kept Bobby Slowick on his heels this last game. I mean, it's you heard Brock Purdy after the game say, "Man, you give us some really tough looks. Like that's a tough defense to go against, man." Like he had to give him a pat on the back because a coach like Brian Flores is a mad scientist. He brings pressure from different places, and then he got Stephon Gilmore, which is one of the most underrated pickups of the offseason. And you look up and you see both safeties down. You see 7 men down, and it looks like they're playing zero, and the safeties pop out. And now they're playing an inverted cover 2, and the 2 corners go deep to take the 2 deep halves of the field away. And then they run another nickel down the middle as the middle run through player. And you're like, by the time the quarterback realizes what the coverage is, he's got 2-3 people bringing him down to the ground. And that's what CJ Stroud was dealing with a majority of this ball game. And we're going to keep going about this defense because he has a lot of guys playing at a high level. Cam Bynum played some good football. Camus Grudger-Hill played some good football. Jonathan Grenard, the ex-Houston Texan, had 3 sacks in this game. He's getting production from all over the place. And you always thought once they lost to Neil Hunter, like where would they get the production from? Where would they get the sack production from? And we're seeing it. We're getting it from a lot of different people. And it's because the variety of the looks and the disguises that come with the Brian Flores coach defense is just a perfect symbiosis of things coming together along with Kevin O'Connell's offense and Sam Darnold playing like an MVP caliber quarterback. Now, let me stop because I have to say it one more time. Sam Darnold is playing like an MVP quality quarterback. And you can argue with somebody else because he didn't have success in the past and he struggled at in New York, et cetera, et cetera. I don't care about what happened in the past. What happened right now is he has 8 touchdown passes on the season, which leads the National Football League. He is in a perfect system for a skill set. He has one of the, if not the best receiver in the National Football League in Justin Jefferson. He has a really good running back and receiving back in Aaron Jones, who's been criminally underrated during his time in Green Bay, but stays in the NFC North and continues to play at a high level. 19 carries for 102 yards, 5 receptions for 46 yards, and a touchdown. Sam Darnold is playing really good football. This is the guy that they expected coming out of USC. And again, to the point I've been trying to make for the last 2 weeks, sometimes it's not best to play him first. It's not. Sometimes they need to sit and learn and absorb. And then they get to a good place and a good system. And thank goodness, I'm sure Sam would say the same thing for the journey that he's been on to get to the perfect place for him to showcase his ability. And he looks like a hand in glove fit in Kevin O'Connell's offense coming from San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan's offense and everything that he learned during his year in San Francisco. I'm so happy for him. I'm happy for his career. Justin Jefferson had 6 catches for 81 yards, looks like his old self. But this team, just overall, they beat the Houston Texans and they beat them bad, 34-7. Like, that doesn't happen. Houston is a really talented team with a quarterback that most, including myself, believe is a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League in CJ Stroud. He was held to 215 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and he was sacked 4 times. Sure, the defense showed up in some respects. Tim Settle had 2 sacks. Will Anderson Jr. continues to play at a high level, had a sack in the game. But, I mean, all levels, all 3 phases, the Minnesota Vikings look like a very tough team. And we didn't think that in the NFC North. We thought it was Detroit's to run away with however they wanted to. And the way it's looking right now, the Packers are finding a way to weather the storm of the Jordan Love injury. I mean, Malik Willis going back to Tennessee and having the kind of revenge game that he had in Jordan Love's absence, he looks like an entirely different player than he looked in Tennessee. And I'm sure the Tennessee Titans fans were like, wait, who is this guy? And who kidnapped Malik Willis and put this other guy in this jersey? Because this guy was threading the needle, running, using his legs when he's supposed to, being patient in the pocket, making great decisions, and just leading this team with a very poised sense of confidence. And his leadership was outstanding in that ball game. Houston goes to face Jacksonville, and that's going to be a good divisional game. I mean, the Vikings at the Packers, these 2 divisional games, I mean, they'll tell us a lot. But right now, the Minnesota Vikings look legit.
Richard, it looked like dark days were ahead for the Vikings when Kirk Cousins packed his things up and left town. I'm sure if you asked every Minnesota fan, they say they probably couldn't dream up a better situation at quarterback. You go out and you get your guy in J.J. McCarthy in the draft, and then you sign a veteran journeyman now in Sam Darnold to be his backup. But like you said, Sam Darnold, they get him on a veteran, very low deal. I don't know what the veteran minimum is, but $6.5 million for Sam Darnold is what they're paying him this year. Richard, they could not have picked a better situation in Minnesota with that transition from Kirk Cousins. Sam Darnold's going to keep him competitive. As a Detroit Lion fan, this team scares me. I mean, you already touched on Aaron Jones. You got Justin Jefferson. Let's not forget they're going to get TJ Hawkinson back later this year. Richard, this team looks very competitive. And Aaron Jones today really impressed me. He was running all over the field, catching balls, running between the middle, very athletic plays. And that's what we talked about earlier in the year and even in the offseason. It shocked me that the Green Bay Packers moved on from Aaron Jones and chose to pay more for Josh Jacobs. I get he's older, but Aaron Jones just adds a huge dynamic in that receiving game. The Vikings, to me, look like a much improved team from last year. I'm worried about them.
Yeah,
Richard, we got to go to.
We got to start to have a deeper dive conversation into because if you look at the quarterback rankings, if you look at completion percentage, the quarterbacks and how they rank this season over the first 3 games, completion percentage, yards per game, yards, touchdowns, et cetera, you're not going to see a lot of the highest paid guys in the order that you're going to think. You're going to see a lot of guys making under $10 million or making under $30 million at the tops of these categories leading their teams, and the guys that's making $50 million right in the middle. And maybe that changes over the 17-game season, but it's not looking like these guys are overwhelmed. I mean, I'm not feeling like, hey, if you put freaking Sam Darnold versus any of these guys that I mean, outside of Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to feel like he's outmatched. I'm not feeling like, hey, if I play him against Joe Burrow, man, he's just going to be so outclassed. He's not. And I don't feel that way about Geno Smith. I think you got to start looking at this under a microscope and start to understand maybe these guys, it's a system. Maybe getting the right coordinator and the guys that actually put time into game planning and coming up with a great game plan, a phenomenal plan, both rushing the football and passing and attacking these defenses and you playing to the quarterback's strengths, maybe that's more important than drafting these kids high because some of these guys who weren't as heralded as they were in the past are having a lot of success in systems that do exactly that. Kevin O'Connell has done a great job. He did a great job when Kirk Cousins was there. I mean, we talked about when Dobbs got a chance to play and the little bit of success that he was able to have just being a plug and play guy. You know, I think he had a couple days to learn the playbook before his first game and he was able to execute. You have to start to think about that if you're an owner about how we really start to build these teams and how important these offensive coordinators and play callers really are. And can you have success with a great play caller and a quarterback who may not be a top 5 pick? The answer is yes.
Well, Richard, before we leave this subject, like this is a first time in Sam Darnold's career where he's never had to really look over his shoulder and say, man, how tight is this leash? I mean, with J.J. McCarthy going off in the offseason, you hate to see it, especially for a young player, but it's almost like it gave him that sense of relief, like, okay, this job is mine. I can play with, a little loose and go out there and be instinctual. He just looks like a completely different quarterback to me. The game looks like it's slowed down for him, which you hear about all the time as players go throughout their career. And like you said, Richard, he's playing with an OC that is tailoring to his strengths. And that's probably what he has not had in the past. Sam Darnold is a true revelation in Minnesota. And like I said, this team scares a little bit heck out of me. Richard, let's move on. Let's go to Pittsburgh because this team, another shocking, surprising team, much like the Minnesota Vikings, is these Pittsburgh Steelers, who I doubt anyone saw starting the season off 3-0, especially without their presumed starter, Russell Wilson. Richard, it's Justin Fields leading this team to a 3-0 start. Let's start with Justin Fields. Even when Russ is healthy, who's starting?
That's the great question, Mitchell, because I thought that was an easy answer, and I'm sure Tomlin does too, but I got a little backlash from that, for thinking that Justin Fields will continue to hold the helm. And this game did nothing to make me uneasy about that decision. Justin Fields was 25 of 32, 245 yards, a touchdown, an interception, and ran one in. He looked like he had great command of this offense. Calvin Austin, congratulations to him. He caught it. He was on the receiving end of another number of Justin Fields' passes. Just slant routes where he just turned it up the field and got more. Even on his 55-yard touchdown, he caught a slant and got going, Mitchell. It was a beautiful play. Cam Hayward able to get a sack. This defense is the story of this team, and it has been the story of this team. It has been the story of a lot of Mike Tomlin's tenure in Pittsburgh. They held almost all their opponents to under 10 points. And that says a lot about TJ Watt. Nick Herbig had 2 sacks in the game. But I honestly thought that in a game, an old school, drag out, run the football, defensive ball game, that this new age LA Chargers team with the amount of talent and Justin Herbert just being the X factor would be able to pull out a win. But my bad, Pittsburgh. That's on me. Should never doubt you. Won't happen again. They held Justin Herbert in check. To the point where I think he came in a little banged up and had to leave the game early. The pain got to be too much. They held J.K. Dobbins, who's been an incredible story throughout this season, to 15 carries for 44 yards. Quentin Johnson, who's been a really cool resurgence story. People were calling him a bust, too many drops, calling for him to get cut even in training camp this season. Caught his 3rd touchdown in the last 2 weeks. Had a really good game. Khalil Mack, another sack. Derwin James, a sack. But you just look at how this team is rallying around Justin Fields, how they're talking about him in interviews, how Tomlin's talking about him, the energy. I mean, they're 3-0. They're 3-0. They've won every game, and then they're going into Indianapolis 3-0 with a chance to be 4-0. I don't see any reason they can't beat the Indianapolis Colts with the way Anthony Richardson is kind of, Jekyll and Hyde. He throws a really good ball sometimes, but sometimes he's inaccurate. Obviously, they're running the ball really well with Jonathan Taylor, but I feel like Pittsburgh is prepared for that. I feel like Pittsburgh is built to beat a team like that. And if you're talking about him going in 4-0, and then Russell Wilson is 100% healthy, he's ready to go, it's going to be a difficult conversation, even for the most adamant Russell Wilson fans and supporters, to say, yeah, we're going to take Justin Fields off the field and put Russell in, and we're going to continue to win, because you don't know. And it's unfair to Russell in that situation, because it's going to be such a short leash from both the fans and the public, that if they lose the next game, and it may be a tougher opponent, maybe I got to look at their schedule, but maybe they run into a true contender in the next game and a really tough opponent. And now Russell has to be tasked with winning that game, because if you sit there and say Justin Fields has won every single game that he's had as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and now Russell has lost the first game he gets to Kansas City Chiefs. If the Kansas City Chiefs come into town and beat Pittsburgh, and you're like, well, Russell lost us that game, he's 0-1, he's 4-0. It's just a ridiculous conversation that doesn't need to happen. I think you got to continue to go with Justin Fields and let him continue to develop. It seems like he's finding a rhythm. He's starting to become the player that they thought he would be. The team is rallying behind him. The defense is rallying behind him. I mean, you can do it. You can put Russell in. Russell is a proven veteran who's won a lot of football games in this league. I just don't see how you do it. I don't see how you justify it to the staff, to the players, and to the fans.
I'm with you, Rich, but I imagine Russell Wilson wants this job bad. I mean, if nothing else, to prove, he is the player he was in Seattle. I mean, this is important for his legacy, Richard. I mean, he was a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Seattle, had some great moments playing with you, rose to the occasion a lot of times, but then he goes to Denver, and that sunny blue sky legacy that he built in Seattle is now covered with clouds, and no one really knows who Russell Wilson is. And this was his opportunity to showcase, hey, I'm still that same guy. You're right. It puts Tomlin in a very tough spot. I'm sure he likes the situation he's in now, because he says, hey, we're rolling with Justin Fields. I got no other choice. It takes the decision out of his hands. And now it's going to make the decision even harder when Russell Wilson comes back. I would love to see Russell Wilson get an opportunity, just because I'm curious to see how he plays with this team. I think Pittsburgh's a heck of a lot better than Denver. But we shall see. We shall see. And like you said,
even in that case, Mitchell, they're going to say we were already, like, even if Russell comes in and has incredible success, like if they continue to win and they go 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, go to the playoffs, people are going to say, oh, Justin Fields is already winning. Was it Russell Wilson, or was it it's just plug and play any quarterback? And so even to that point, in terms of legacy building and who gets the credit, Tomlin's going to get the credit, Mitchell, because Tomlin is the guy that continues to win despite all the moving pieces, all the chaos, all the interchange, the injuries, this, that, and the third. This is one of the best starts that they've had. And if they're able to start 4-0 with Justin Fields at quarterback, I don't know.
I'm with you, Richard. Let's go to Las Vegas. A little bit of a surprise. This weekend showed me the NFL is still the NFL, and these teams are still NFL teams. Everyone wrote off the Carolina Panthers. Everyone wrote off the New York Giants. Both of these teams go and get huge wins. In Carolina, they sub in. Out goes Bryce Young. In comes Andy Dalton, the griddled vet, comes in, and all of a sudden Carolina looks like a completely different squad. And before we get going, Richard, it's time for our Players in Primetime segment, brought to you by our friends and partners over at Breitling. Richard, I got mine on, that Honolulu blue and silver. Got so many compliments already this weekend.
I bet.
Brought home a win with it on. Heck, I had a wedding last night, Richard, and I wore this to the wedding with a Honolulu blue tie. I know you saw videos from that wedding. I was having a great time. Well, this week's Players in Prime Time player is Andy Dalton. I mean, talk to me about his performance because it was a good one.
The red rifle, Metro. He's a guy that I knew was capable of doing this because I played against him. He came into the same draft class as me. He's done this for a long time. He's El Rifle Rojo is what Andrew Whitworth texted the group because he played with him for a long time in Cincinnati. And he's a guy in a good system, which Dave Canales has, can be really effective. And that's what the frustration that Dave Canales was dealing with the first 2 weeks of the season, because you go through all this training camp, OTAs and everything. You hype your team up. You feel good about the guys that you picked up, the guys that you got. You say, hey, we're going to go optimistically into the season. We can go to the playoffs. And then to see that you can't even evaluate how good your team is because the quarterback isn't able to read the defense. He's not able to prepare. He's not able to execute even the simplest things. You got to pull the plug. And it's a hard decision, especially as a first-year head coach, to pull the decision on a number 1 pick his second year in the National Football League. So give him credit for going to the ownership and saying, hey, you hired me to do a job, and I'm not able to do this job if you continue to make me play this kid because you're about to have us all get fired because I can't show you how good the defense is. I can't show you how good Chuba Hubbard is. Chuba Hubbard had 21 carries for 114 yards, 5 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. I can't show you how good he is because they don't respect our quarterback. So they're going to keep 8 people in the box. They're going to sit on every route. They're going to freaking blitz us until the cows come home. Then you insert, I can't show you how good Deontay Johnson is. Hey, we traded for him. We traded him from the Pittsburgh Steelers. We thought this would be a good pick. I can't show you that he's a good player because we don't have a guy that's getting him to the ball consistently. Insert Andy Dalton. He goes in his first game this season, 26 of 37, 319, 3 touchdowns, the first quarterback this season with 300-plus yards and 3 TDs in one game. Carolina had been outscored 73-13 in the first 2 weeks. And we're not even talking about their defensive coordinator because their defensive coordinator in Carolina is really good. But again, you can't show it if you don't have the offense to go along with it. You playing hopeless defense. And so it was really great. This is the same Las Vegas Raiders team that just beat the Baltimore Ravens 26-23 in Baltimore. So let's not act like this is just some throwaway win. Las Vegas is coming off a huge win on the road. So to go into Las Vegas and beat this team in a convincing fashion, scoring 36 points the way they did, Ejiro Evero and this defense have to be feeling really good offensively. They have to be. I mean, there's a lot of cheersing going on that plane ride back to Carolina because they feel like, hey, this is the team that we knew we had, and this is going to be good for Bryce too. Hey, Bryce, this is a pro. This is a veteran quarterback, a guy that has had tremendous success in this league. Watch him, take your notes, learn from him, learn the things he's doing, bounce ideas off of him, ask him questions. I don't think Andy Dalton is sitting there trying to hide things from you. He feels very secure in who he is, his family, and his faith. I think this is good for everybody involved. It's good for Carolina. And it was great to see that team come away with the win. Obviously, the Las Vegas Raiders were very frustrated. Gardner Minshew, 18-28, 214 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Devontae Adams was sitting there at halftime, shell-shocked by what he was seeing from this Carolina Panthers team. But Panthers go to the Bengals. And speaking of $50 million quarterbacks, this is, again, going to start a very difficult conversation if the Cincinnati Bengals are not able to beat the Carolina Panthers in the Red Rifle. If the Red Rifle goes and beats the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow, again, our conversation about elite quarterbacks and what they really are and who they really are and how much support they need around them. Like y'all say about these game managers, they need all this support. Well, so do the elites outside of Patrick Mahomes. And now we got to give Josh Allen credit. He doesn't have a ton of superstars or big name receivers, and he's finding ways to win. So give him that credit, and I'm ready to give him that credit. But outside of that, don't give me that. Everybody else needs guys. And Brock Purdy just showed he can do it with Jauan Jennings going 11 catches for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. So again, don't give me that.
Richard, we'll see. I mean, the Panthers, they look a lot better this week than they have in weeks past. Shout out again to Andy Dalton, our Breitling player in prime time. Guys, make sure you go check out Breitling.com. They just launched it. They've got a partnership with the NFL. They're releasing team watches for each team. You guys got to check them out. They're beautiful pieces. It's something that I'm sure is going to stay in my family for a generation or two, Richard.
Well, Mitchell, it's been a fantastic episode. Thank you to our friends at Breitling. Thank you to all our incredible fans and supporters and subscribers for being with us for another chaotic week of the National Football League. We look forward to seeing you next week with an incredible guest in our Monday night recap. Appreciate you.